Welcome to the Employment PowerPoint for Special Education 652. Employment or work is very important in the transition movement, primarily because there are values associated with work, such as one gains a sense of identity. When you think about when you meet someone, you ask, what do you do? Oh, I'm a teacher. That gives you a sense of identity. It's a certain role. It also gives a person a sense of contribution or accomplishment, a sense of purpose, a presence in the community, engagement. There are social aspects of work. Many of us have friends and acquaintances, and our workplace is a major social outlet. And, of course, there are the monetary aspects of work. When the transition movement was first conceptualized, this was the first model. Madeline Wills, Ozers' Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, so that is at the federal level, and this was in 1983. And one of the, with PL 94-142 in 1975, what happened was in 1983, all those students who started special education in the birth of special education were graduating. So this was a look at what happened to these students upon graduation from public high school. They had been offered a free appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment with an IEP. And what was found is they weren't ready for life after school. So the model of transition and transition was born. So transition was born in 1983, just like special education was born in 1975. And Madeline Wills said there are three bridges to employment. No special services, you graduate from school and you get a job on your own. Time-limited services. So this may be where an agency is helping you in the initial stages of training and placement, and ongoing services, whether that be in a sheltered environment or with support on an ongoing basis. A few years later, Halpern said employment was a little bit too narrow, that transition from school to adult life shouldn't be just employment, but the main focus should be community adjustment. And then there were generic services, time-limited services, and ongoing services. And within that community adjustment, there were three pillars. One's residential environment, employment, and social and interpersonal networks. So Halpern expanded on the initial definitions of career education versus vocational education. Career education prepares a student for a lifetime of work and adult roles. Right now, you will notice that the schools have been focusing a lot on college and career ready. So career education is more than vocational education of the past because it prepares students for a lifetime of work and adult roles. It is defined as both learning about living and earning a living. So it is more than just the job itself. The process of systematically coordinating all school, family, community components together to facilitate each individual's potential. Vocational education are academic and work skills that make a person job ready. Preparation for jobs requiring less than a baccalaureate degree. Activities whereby one learns a primary work role, and the emphasis is on specific job preparation. So we've had vocational education in our schools for as long as I can remember, and in actuality it was very important for students with special needs especially to gain some vocational education before they left school. Then the trend went towards more academic preparation and preparing students with disabilities for college. And now we get more of the college and career ready, which is a broader conceptualization. So, career development theory. Just like we have learning theories, like we have Piaget's stage theory of learning, we have Vygotsky's sociocultural model of learning, a learning theory, and we have Skinner's behaviorist learning theory. There's also career development theory. And Donald Super is probably the main one, although there are others. But Donald Super has a career development theory that is a lifespan approach. And if you'll notice, if many of you know Erikson's lifespan development theory, it looks very much like this. I believe that Super took Erikson's stage theory of development and modified this for career development. So the role as a citizen, as a worker, as a student, as a leisureite, and as a homemaker. So as you'll see, this has citizen is community integration, worker, employment, student, learning, and leisureite, play. So live, learn, work, play. Super said that there are stages across time. So the first stage of career development is growth. So that is at the school age. Just growing, learning about careers and adult roles, not just as a worker, but adult roles. Then exploration, when you're in your teens, starting to explore those adult roles. What are different jobs like? What are different occupations like? What are different majors like? And what do they lead to? Then in our in our 30s, we start becoming established in a career role. So this is when we are getting our first jobs, we are becoming established, we are developing an identity as a teacher, as a citizen, etc. And we can recycle through these different roles at different times. Many people, in fact, it's very common to have a second career or have a life change. Maintenance. After our 30s, and this varies for individuals, we become where we are kind of stabilizing in our career. We've already established ourselves, and then we are stabilizing. This is, or the maintenance phase. This is oftentimes the primary earning years, the primary contribution years or contributing years, and then disengagement, where we start pulling back and thinking of retiring and retiring. What does this mean for our students? Work preparation. Educational career development theory means there are stages. That also means that employment and work preparation applies to elementary, middle, and secondary school teachers. The first stage is awareness. What are the different types of careers? All we know is what we've seen. So broadening that horizon so our students see something different. So our students see other occupations. All they know is what they've seen in their family members. We need to broaden those horizons and help students see all the different kinds of occupations and roles out there. So awareness is elementary school. Orientation would be middle school. What are the requirements of these jobs that you've heard about? So you say you want to be a doctor. What are the requirements? You say you want to play in the NFL. What are the requirements? What are the specifics? Students should start learning about the requirements and the specifics of various careers and adult roles during middle school. Then in high school, job tryouts. Spending a couple of days on that job. preparation would actually be the vocational training in specific fields. In a way, college can be vocational education. Vocational education for teachers is going through a program, taking the classes for teacher licensure, and then finally placement where you have the on-the-job experience. So career awareness. Elementary school students, what do those experiences look like? Basic home and health care, developing a sense of self-worth, a work ethic, just developing positive attitudes about work, about basic responsibilities, and discovering different kinds of work. Career exploration, middle school, this is when they begin to investigate their own unique abilities, needs, and interests in terms of work. You want to work with animals, you want to be a veterinarian. How many years of school does it take to be a veterinarian? Are you really going to like to be around animals all day? And not only that, can you work with people who are the owners or masters of those animals? Anyway, in the middle school, provide children opportunities to develop independence, daily living, and personal social skills, and more than just the job title, what are the requirements in terms of education, but also temperament? Indoors, outdoors, working with people, working alone, those kind of things that are the requirements of different kinds of jobs. Career preparation then is the focus of high school years, where there are some decisions made about what kind of career path. So in the high schools we have the career pathways and skill acquisition. So students who have acquired the necessary values and attitudes can then begin the selection process for an appropriate career area. I like how the high schools are doing the career pathways, because I think students learn that there are numerous jobs within this larger umbrella. So if you are in the Health and Human Services career pathway, there are numerous jobs within that. That includes teachers, as well as medical personnel, as well as social workers and counselors. So there's a broad area there. And I think we need to help our students better understand the career pathways, and then as a broad picture, and then narrow it down into, within that larger career area, what are some of the specifics for specific jobs, and which of these fit your interests, abilities, temperament the best. And then career assimilation is, after you have chosen a job, starting to fit into that role. The post-secondary training, the more specific training for specific jobs, and adjustment to, how many of you are experiencing adjustment to the job situations of being a teacher? Students should be able to engage in satisfying avocational, that means leisure and hobbies, family, civic volunteer work, as well as paid employment, and continuing education and follow-up services that will be needed. Methods of data collection. So, what are some of the assessments or data that you can collect that will provide information about student progress towards transition goals? So one thing, attendance records. That gives you a lot of information about dependability and responsibility that's going to be required in the world of work. Special education assessments such as the academic, the intellectual, and the behavioral areas, those that we do as probably part of the IEP. But in addition, for the ITP, We want to have information about factors that could complicate certain job training and placement and need to be addressed, certain accommodations. Typically, these may be certain health requirements, endurance, like can the person, how long can they be on their feet? Or if there are some specific mobility issues, specific health issues that may need to be addressed. In school, those things may not be as critical as in certain workplaces. So we need to make sure that we match the physical requirements to the work requirements. Methods of data collection, student, parent, and teacher interviews. These are the kind of pieces of information or methods of data collection, assessment that are important for transition plans, such as students' interests. What are their leisure time activities? What are the prior work experiences, even if it's volunteerism? What are the students' and the parents' career aspirations? What do they look towards? Social affective skill level, temperament, and experience with work-related behaviors such as task completion. Those are all the kinds of things that we should collect data on. So this is assessments in making the transition plan. So methods of gathering that data could be interest inventories, vocational aptitude and ability tests, career maturity ratings. And if you're saying, what are these? Look them up. They're on the internet. You can find them. There's so many of them out there. Job readiness. Another one might be a job analysis. You actually assess the requirements of the job. That may require you going out, doing job shadowing of someone, and writing down all the requirements. Oftentimes, we don't know the exact job requirements of a job that we've never done. So we need to go investigate. We need to collect data on that. We need to go observe. Commercial work sample systems, self-developed work samples, simulations of work, behavioral analysis, and situational assessment. Situational assessment is what I was just describing. Go to the environment or the situation and assess the environment. Many of you have done an ecological assessment of the student's home or the classroom. This just extends that into a workplace or into the community. So there's a continuum of employment options, from sheltered employment to competitive employment. Sheltered, supported, subsidized, and then competitive. I have these on a continuum because at the far left, sheltered employment, that is the most restrictive setting and the most isolated from the community. Competitive employment on the other end of the continuum is the most integrated into the community and most independent. So on the sheltered employment, we have dependent, isolated. On the other end of the continuum, we have the most independent and integrated. So sheltered employment, that was at the far left. It usually entails working in a segregated center, like a sheltered workshop or an adult day program. Employees receive sub-minimum wage or piece rate. Sheltered employment examples are like Lanakila, Goodwill, and I don't think there's anything left at Waimano Home, but after they moved from being an institution, they did have a sheltered workshop for a little while. Major disadvantages are these are environments, a segregated center, so the employees are not working with people without disabilities. So it is a group of people with disabilities all working together. It's kind of like the FSC class of the adult world. There may be excessive dependence on the workshop personnel. Relate this to the FSC class. You see that sometimes where the students have an excessive dependence on their EA, on their skills trainer, etc. And lack of mobility from the workshop situation to more integrated employment. Just like in the school, there is a lot of times a lack of movement from the FSC class to more integrated settings. Advantages, though, it gives the person somewhere to go each day. If they were not in the workshop, they would likely be home, unengaged, not doing anything. So the lesser of two evils, while sheltered employment may not be the ideal, it is better than some of the alternatives. So there is some interaction with friends with disabilities. Workplace readiness skills training. So a lot of times in sheltered workshops there will be some work social skills training and some daily living skills training. So they will learn, individuals, they'll cook. They will do some community jobs. So, like I say, it is not the ideal, but it may be better than the alternatives. Supported employment is one step up. So, supported employment involves training employees on a job site in the community by professional staff. Some examples of supported employment, Goodwill has some supported employment in the community. So they have their centers, the Goodwill centers where people with disabilities work, but they also have some job coaches that go into the community with people with disabilities in employment. Easter Seals also has a work placement program. Easter Seals has partnered with Safeway stores. You may see a couple of employees that have a job coach at Safeways. Anyway, employees receive the necessary services and assistance to learn the specific job skills. So a job coach is there with the employee with a disability. Supported employment has three elements. Wages are paid, although sometimes it's slightly less than minimum wage. Work is performed in an integrated setting in the community. This is not in an isolated center. It is in the community. It is at Safeway. It is at McDonald's. And ongoing support services are provided. So this is Madeline Will's idea of the ongoing support services. And also the Andrew Halpern model. This is the ongoing support. So there are three types of supported employment: a job coach model, enclaves, and work crews. So in the job coach model, you have an employee working with a job coach. This is very typical, like at Safeway. As the person learns to be a bagger and to go out into the parking lot and get the carts, etc., there is a job coach. I have also seen work enclaves. So that means 3 or 4 people are working at a job. One example I know of was at a Pizza Hut, where there were 4 employees who were supervised by one professional. So instead of a one-on-one, you now have a 4-on-1. Okay, and this professional, so a job coach for these 4 individuals that worked at Pizza Hut together, performing a job. And work crews, this is quite popular. These are mobile work crews usually. I have seen them both with yard service and house cleaning service here in Honolulu. So a group, so say 3 people go out with one job coach, and they have contracts with individuals. So they will do, like I say, yard service or house cleaning. And there is a agency employee there with the work crew. These are all advantages of supported employment, and it is one step up from that sheltered employment because it's in the community and it's semi-independent. Advantages of supported employment. It offers a unique employment alternative for those individuals who may not be able to sustain their employment independently. They couldn't quite go into a job and just work independently without some support. During the supported employment position, a situational assessment of strengths and skills in a real work environment can be conducted. So what are the requirements of this job? What happens on the job on a day-to-day basis? Job development, so locating jobs that are commensurate with the individual's interest, abilities, and experience. And the job coaching is provided directly on the job site to meet the employer's specific requirements. Disadvantages, it's very similar to when you have one of your students go into general ed, but they're with the EA. So the participants may have limited contact with the non-disabled coworkers. Sometimes that job coach kind of acts as a buffer between the person, the worker, and the coworkers without disabilities. Same thing here. So think about this again. So we have the FSC class, which is the sheltered employment. Think about supported employment as the person going into a general ed class with their one-on-one. Okay, it's the same thing but in the workplace. So sometimes there can be a dependency on the job coach, or if you're thinking about school, dependency on the skills trainer. Sometimes working on an enclave or a work crew may prevent the participants from getting their own jobs. Okay. As long as they're in this group and on this crew, they're not going to be seeking independent employment. The next category is subsidized employment. It is similar to competitive employment, which is at the independent end of the continuum, and it may be seen as a short-term alternative. What this involves is there are government subsidies to employers for a probationary period. So if a company hires an employee with a disability, the company is subsidized part of that employee's wages until the employee can get up to speed on the job. So that gives just a little bit more time. So maybe employees know the job skills, but they're unable to complete the skills at the required rate of production. I'll give you an example that I had. So we did training for people in the hospitality industry. So those individuals knew how to clean a hotel room, but they were not as fast as the non-disabled employees. So the company that hired the individual with a disability, it was called Targeted Jobs Tax Credit, the employer got a subsidy for 6 months. And at that point, so the employee's wage came from half from the employer, half from the subsidy for like the first 3 months. Then it went 3/4 of the employer and 1/4 from the tax credit. And then after 6 months, it was fully paid by the employer. So it gave the employer a 6-month window and subsidy of the employee's wages, and it encouraged employers to take a chance on someone who may not be all the way up to speed right at first, but they can get up to speed with training, with repetition, with experience. Active employment is when the individual is hired in a community integrated setting, and they receive at least minimum wage, interact with coworkers without disabilities, producing valued goods and services, and has opportunities for increased earning and responsibilities. Competitive employment is what we see as fully employed. This is the most preferred outcome for young adults with mild to moderate disabilities because it establishes the economic and personal foundation necessary for an integrated, independent, and productive life. On the job placement continuum, competitive employment offers the highest degree of integration and independence and has many advantages over sheltered or supported employment. Once again, here's the continuum. Sheltered employment is the least integrated, most restrictive, and most dependent. Competitive employment, the most integrated, most independent. So, what can we do elementary, middle, and high school? We have career awareness, developing basic skills, awareness, develop personal and social significance of work, that basic self-awareness of oneself as an individual and as part of a group. In middle school, this is that orientation, maybe even shadow a parent. So instead of the official job shadowing, maybe, follow your parent to work day. And then high school, actually vocational assessments, decision-making skills, a job tryout, interviewing skills, applying to the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and perhaps a part-time job. Okay? In grades 9 to 10, the transition planning team needs to be formed. The IEP needs to have the ITP, the transition plan, by age 16. So at this point, develop post-secondary and employment goals in the student's IEP. Vocational testing and assessments, provide information about various adult programs, visit different programs and possible employment sites, develop job readiness skills, get on the waiting list for Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and or if the student has a more significant disability, then it's Developmental Disabilities Division of the Department of Health, and develop functional community skills. Continue to develop those post-secondary goals and start honing in instead of broad areas. Start becoming a little bit more specific. Visit different programs, provide work experiences, assist the student in locating and securing employment before graduation, and provide supervision and follow-up services. And finally, remember, the #1 predictor of success in employment is having employment experience prior to exiting high school.